Legendary tunnels beneath the city. They stole his data. So this could be one of the biggest discoveries in Peru since Machu Picchu. They open the trap door, they descend down these stairs into a crypt, a colonial crypt. There's a whole underground complex. And it was very important to the Inca. And he asked the priest, "What's this?" And the priest said, "That's the Chincana." Coricancha was absolutely laden with gold and silver. The walls were covered in plaques of gold. And they had at Coricancha, they had a garden, a life-size garden with life-size depictions of different animals and people and plants, stalks of corn, and all casted in pure gold and silver. Wow. The whole thing. Okay, so the Spanish catch wind of this. So they're making a beeline for Cusco to capture the capital city. They already executed the king. Now they're going to get the capital city and all the treasure. Well, the Inca priests, obviously, they know the Spaniards are coming. So what do? In the Coricancha are the most important artifacts of the Inca Empire. This is where the great golden sun, this artifact that was cast in the form of a sun, this is where that artifact was, and all kinds of. In fact, in the Coricancha, they had the mummified remains of their previous Sapa Incas, previous Inca emperors, and on the winter solstice, which is a time called celebrated a festival called Inti Raymi in Peru, they would parade the corpses of these past Inca kings around as if they were still alive, right? So this was this most sacred place in the Inca Empire. The foundations of this temple are megalithic. They're made of green diorite. But today, if you go to Coricancha, you'll see these exquisite andesite walls that are built in the Cyclopean style. They're Cyclopean, which means there's no mortar between the joints. They're fitted precisely together. I'm not sure if those walls, if the walls inside of the temple were built by the Inca, probably. Okay, but this would represent the finest monumental architecture of the Inca. But that's not the point. The point is that the priests, because the Spaniards were on their way and they knew what the Spaniards wanted now, they wanted the gold and silver artifacts, what did the priests do? They gathered, a couple thousand of the Inca in Cusco, and they began to collect all of the most important artifacts of the Inca, including many of those artifacts made of gold and silver, and they took them down into a tunnel, the entrance of which was beneath the temple of the Coricancha. They took these artifacts down into this tunnel, and this tunnel runs for 1 mile beneath the Coricancha, the temple of the Inca, to the galleries and caverns beneath the megalithic citadel of Sacsayhuaman. And it makes a straight line, right? Because according to legend, beneath Sacsayhuaman, which is that megalithic site I referenced earlier, there's a whole underground complex. And it was very important to the Inca, and this is allegedly, according to legend, this is where all these artifacts went. They went to those chambers beneath that megalithic edifice. So the Spaniards arrive, they siege the city of Cusco, they overthrow the Inca, they take possession of the city. But the priests keep the secret. The Spaniards never learn about the tunnel.
No kidding.
They never learn about the tunnel. So much of the gold and silver, and certainly the most important religious artifacts, go into the tunnel and make their way down to the galleries under that megalithic wall. The Spaniards never learn about it. They hear rumors of it, but it's only rumors. And over the years, this has become a legend, a myth. So if you go to Cusco today, and you ask an archaeologist or an anthropologist or a historian about, it's called the Chincana, by the way, the Chincana Grande specifically. If you ask them about the Chincana is that tunnel, they'll say, oh, that's just a legend. That's just a myth. Now, they'll admit that there was gold and silver artifacts of the life-size. They'll show you that today, where it was at the Coricancha, that these life-size figurines were cast in gold and silver. That's all historical record. But they'll tell you that the tunnel's a myth. Doesn't exist.
And nobody's found it.
Nobody's found it until we found it.
Get the fuck out of here. You found it?
We found it. And
Holy
we
shit.
found it, and me and Gary and Anselm P. Ramla together. Now, Anselm, I'm going to try and not digress too far into this, but Anselm has had the opportunity to do some unprecedented excavations in the city in Cusco. Anselm excavated at Sacsayhuaman. He excavated in front of the walls of Sacsayhuaman, and later on, miraculously, he obtained permission to excavate in the Coricancha. Unprecedented. Okay? When he was excavating at Sacsayhuaman, he discovered at the lowest levels of that edifice only exclusively pre-Incan artifacts.
Wow.
No Inca artifacts were present at the lower levels. What does that indicate? The Inca didn't build those walls.
Wow.
Only pre-Inca artifacts and he had all of the proof. I've seen the artifacts, pictures of the artifacts, and I've been to Sacsayhuaman with Anselm. He walked me through the site and showed me where he excavated, and all of this is very well known. He was interviewed on Peruvian TV up in Cusco when they were doing their excavations. And I forget when this was. I want to say it was back in the 90s, I think. I don't recall. But while Anselm was excavating at the walls of Sacsayhuaman, he heard about the rumor of the Shinkana. And he decided that he was going to take a couple of guys from his team, and they were going to go down to the Coricancha to investigate this legend. Now, understand that the Coricancha it's there still today. You can go visit it in Cusco, and you still have the foundational level of the Coricancha. It's still there. You still have the ruins, but there's a Catholic church, Santo Domingo, that's built on top of it. There's a cathedral there, and there's a convent. The cathedral and convent of Santo Domingo. And it's owned, basically, it's overseen by the Dominican order. And this is all very interesting because the new pope is not a Dominican who spent much of his time in Peru. So the Dominican order has been occupying the Coricancha for centuries. The conquistadors gave it to the Dominican order. And so Anselm goes down to see if he can find out about this legend, and he meets with the prior of the order there, the head priest, and the prior receives him, and they sit down in his office, and Anselm says, "I'm over here excavating at Sacsayhuaman, and I've heard about this legend of the Shinkana, and I'm just curious if it's true." And the priest thinks about it for a minute, and he looks at Anselm and he says, "Yes, the legend is true." And then he says, "Would you like to see it?" And Anselm is kind of in shock, like, "Yeah, of course." So the priest accompanies Anselm and a couple of his guys into the cathedral. They help him push an altar out of the way that's sitting there on the cathedral floor. And there's a trap door under this altar. They open the trap door. They descend down these stairs into a crypt, a colonial crypt. And as they're in the crypt, they notice that there's an opening that's been partially blocked off with bricks. And Anselm walked up to the opening, and he asked the priest, "What's this?" And the priest said, "That's the Shinkana." And Anselm took his flashlight, flashed in there, and he saw the tunnel. And he said that the tunnel was lined with the same exquisite masonry as the temple above. And these are trapezoidal. You know, the doors, the Inca doors are trapezoidal, and the tunnel is trapezoidal. And it just went on endlessly. There was the Shinkana. So Anselm said, "This is great. The legend is true. I've got my team excavating at Sacsayhuaman. Let me go get them and bring them here, and we'll take these bricks down, and we'll go in, and we'll make this discovery and film it and everything." And suddenly the priest's his disposition changes, dying, and he says, "No. I should have never brought you here. You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to see this. Get out." And he kicks them out of the church, out of the crypt, and out of the cathedral. He just flips on a dime. Okay, so now Anselm knows that the legend is true. He's seen the tunnel with his own eyes. He knows that the most important artifacts of the Inca Empire, and who knows what else, is hidden under that in the galleries beneath that ancient megalithic edifice. So ultimately, he gets permission, and I'm not going to go through how, but miraculously gets permission to excavate at the Coricancha. What's his objective? Well, he's got a public objective, which is whatever, but privately, his objective is to get into the Shinkana, right? Brings his team, this is years later, like I believe the early 2000s, I'm probably wrong on the dates. He brings his team to Peru, and he's got an international team. He's got GPR, he's got all kinds of equipment. They're ready to make this discovery because he knows it's there, he's seen it. They arrive on the scene after miraculously getting permission to excavate. He goes into the cathedral. Somebody changed the floor. The tiles, the floor has been retiled. Okay? He takes his GPR unit, goes to where he knows the crypt is. Can't find the crypt. Long story short, it appears that somebody filled it in with debris, or that it naturally, maybe an earthquake and whatever. But the crypt is now inaccessible. So now he's got to try and find a different way in, right? Because the crypt is closed. So he spends, I forget how many months, on this excavation. They actually discover the foundations of the temple. That's how I know that the foundations of the temple are megalithic green diorite, as are the megalithic foundations of Cusco in general. Definitely predates the Inca. The foundations, megalithic green diorite. And long story short, he gets kicked out of the church. They have to, and this was, the president of Peru visited him when he was doing this. The Queen of Spain came and visited in the excavation. This was a big deal in Peru. And ultimately, Anselm got kicked out. Could not get into the Shinkana. Very frustrated, right? That was the goal. Well, fast forward now, years later. I'm with Anselm in Cusco. We have our GPR unit. Well, Anselm knows where the tunnel is. He knows, he saw it, right? He knows where it goes. So we took our unit, put it in a duffel bag, and we walked the perimeter of the church. And we then took the data, put it into the computer, and guess what showed up?
No way.
The Shinkana. And you can see the trapezoidal form of it, the Shinkana, right where Anselm said it was. The tunnel's there. Then Anselm, later on, he acquired another unit, an additional unit to the one that we had, and he went back with his team, and he did the same thing. He walked the perimeter and verified the original discovery of the GPR data, and he even got a clearer scan because he took more time, and he got a really good 3D image of the Shinkana. It's there. And then he did a press conference last year in Barcelona where he revealed the data, right? Then, I don't know if you saw this, but last year, this was international news. It was announced after Anselm did his conference in Barcelona. It was announced that archaeologists in Cusco have discovered tunnels beneath the city. Legendary tunnels beneath the city. They stole his data. We know for sure they did. They stole the GPR data. They claimed to be the discoverers when it was really Anselm. And they were trying to get a project to excavate. But long story short, I'm not sure how much of this I'm allowed to say, but let's just say that there's a really good chance Anselm P. Ramla will be breaking into the Shinkana soon.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
So,
are you going to be there for that?
Yes.
Awesome.
So,
can I come?
Very possibly, yes. So this could be one of the biggest discoveries in Peru since Machu Picchu.
When is this happening? Do you know?
He's working on the permitting. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to share, but let's just say that Anselm has everything in the works behind the scenes. I didn't even know this. I met with his son in Lima. He has no idea that I'm sharing this, but the Shinkana is real. So the question is,
what's down there?
What's down there? What artifacts are sequestered away beneath the walls of Sacsayhuaman? Well, I think maybe a clue regarding the identity of the builders of the megaliths in Peru. That may be one thing that's down there. Who knows? I mean, all of the most important artifacts of the Inca are there, and it's real. It's not a legend.